You've spelunked into the Mat Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Mat Cave. Thank you all so much for being here. This week, I'm a little bit under the weather. I guess spring just doesn't agree with my head. But this week, well, there's a little bit to talk about still. That's the glory of having multiple sports teams in Utah now. It's not just the Jazz. It's a couple things, and I won't be talking about Real Salt Lake this week. That loss to Vancouver just frustrated the ever-living goodness out of me, so I'm not going to go into that one. But I'll talk about the Utah Hockey Club, the International Ice Hockey Federation tournament that starts this week. So if you still have a taste for hockey after this great season we just had, and you don't like any of the teams remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs, well, we got our boys representing a couple of nations, actually, in this tournament. So I'll tell you a little bit about the tournament, why it's important, and who from Utah Hockey Club is going to be there. And then we have some transfer portal activity for BYU. I know Utah fans, I'm sorry, but it's just not as exciting. So I'll be talking about BYU, the transfer portal, what's been going on for both men's basketball and football, and what it means for the future, and then Microsoft. It's been a long time since they've stepped in it. And, well, this week they've stepped in it, and they stepped in it hard. So I'll talk about what they did, the decision they made, and what it means for gaming as we know it. But, as always, thank you all so much for being here. Please leave that 5 stars, like, comment, subscribe, wherever it is, however you listen. Helps me out a ton. And as you know, I say this every week, but I'm going to continue saying it. I want to do this every day. So please, 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 invite your friends, invite your family members, invite your friendly family members and your family-friendly members. And let's do this. All right, so the International Ice Hockey Federation, the IIHF, their tournament starts this week. It is being held in Sweden and Denmark, in Stockholm, and let me see if I can't pronounce this other name correctly. Herning? Sorry to anybody who speaks Danish, but I think that's right. Herning, maybe? But that's where they'll be. Group A is playing in Stockholm, and Group B, where the United States is playing in Herning. I'm going to go with that. That sounds a little bit more Danish than Herning. Who knows? But what we've got going on here is a pretty big tournament. Like, this is the World Cup of hockey, if I could put it that way. Now, the very best players obviously will not be in this because they're in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And if it took years for Gary Bettman to allow them into the Olympics, well, he's probably never going to allow the big stars to go into the IIHF tournament. So we've got that. But this is exciting. This is really fun. The teams that are in this, or I guess the countries that are in this tournament, with Russia being banned still for obvious reasons, we have, let me see if I know my flags well enough here. My mom's a geography teacher, so sorry, Mom. But we've got Austria, Canada, Finland, France. Those are easy. Slovakia, I know that one, and Slovenia. It's helpful when they're both in there next to each other because they have basically the same flag, but they have their symbols in the left are a little bit different. And then we've got Sweden. And then the last one in Group A, I don't know that one. I'm colorblind too, so I can't even describe the colors to you, but I think it's Latvia. So that's Group A playing in Stockholm. And then in Group B, we have the United States, obviously. We've got Czechia. For those of you who don't know, that is the Czech Republic. They've changed their name to Czechia. Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Norway, Switzerland, and a flag that I'm not terribly too familiar with, so I had to cheat for this one, Kazakhstan. Who knew? So those are the teams in the IIHF Ice Hockey World Championship. That's a very long name, not as catchy as the FIFA World Cup, but that's what we have. And as for players from the Utah Hockey Club that will be representing their countries, we've got, obviously, Karel Vejmelka playing for Czechia. He's going to be the starting goalkeeper for them. And then we've got Logan Cooley, Michael Kesselring, and Clayton Keller for Team USA. Clayton Keller is actually the captain. He was elected the captain of the team, probably as an apology for not including him in the Four Nations face-off, which was criminal. But yeah, he got captain representing the United States. It's pretty cool. And then for Germany, we've got Maximilian Zuber. He is a player that is kind of bouncing between Tucson and Utah. He was in Tucson more so this year, but he's representing Germany for the third consecutive year. That's pretty cool. So we've got all of them, and representing Canada, we've got Barrett Hayton. We got a lot of guys in this tournament, so that's really cool. Obviously, this is like the B team for the U.S. and Canada. I mean, for Canada, it's probably the C team, if I'm being honest. But overall, really cool. Really good stuff. Looking out here, the World Championship was established, here's some history for you, in 1920, and it is the premier international tournament, not mentioning the Olympics, right? And because of Gary Bettman and the NHL and their stance on the Olympics, this has kind of been it, right? That's why the Four Nations face-off was so cool, is it was because it was the best on best for the first time since Vancouver Olympics, I think. So this tournament's going to be fun. If you want to watch it, you can stream it on IIHF.tv or on YouTube. Just search IIHF Worlds, and you can find it there as well. I'll probably be watching the U.S. play, and maybe Czechia too, so I could watch Veggie play. But that's pretty cool. I didn't know this was happening this year because next year is the Winter Olympics. So this is kind of a warm-up and a way for the governing bodies of these countries, for these hockey teams, obviously more so for Canada and the U.S. that have a deeper pool, to see who can be the extra guys. Because for the U.S., obviously, the Tkachuk brothers aren't going to be there. For Canada, you're not going to have Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar playing. So this will be fun. It'll be fun. It's a lot of young guys, too. Obviously, with Logan Cooley being there. The dude just turned 21, yesterday, I think, or today, as I'm recording this. So happy birthday to him. And the tournament runs from May 9th through May 25th. And they've set it up really well so that the U.S. and Canada could potentially be the championship game, I guess. It's not really the gold medal game, but that would be pretty cool. Unfortunately, they've got Finland and Sweden in the same group. I would have liked to see those two separated as well, so we could see a Finland-Sweden final if upsets happened. But I wanted to shout this tournament out because I haven't been hearing enough about it, especially from local Utah outlets. We've got a hockey team now. Let's talk about the players when they go represent the country internationally. You know what I mean? Stop talking about other crap that just doesn't matter. Anyway, oh boy, those places should really hire me. All right, so that's the International Ice Hockey, so that's IIHF Federation tournament. The puck drops this Friday, May 9th. Now, if you want to catch these live, obviously you're going to be going on European hours. So from us here in Salt Lake City, that's about 8 to 9 hours ahead. So if you're looking at 5 p.m. over there in Denmark, that is about, 9 or 8 a.m. our time. So I guess block your calendars at work if you're really a diehard, which I'm not, but who knows? Maybe I'll be able to catch some stuff. All right, so let's move it right along to BYU's transfer portal activity. So I've been talking a lot about this, but that's because I'm hyped about it. I'm very excited about the direction that BYU is going. And I've talked about this before, but the 14, 15-year-old fan in me, the diehard in me, is so excited about all of this. All the pain, all of the suffering that he went through in high school at the hands of not only other kids, but adults, has been worth it. So let's first talk about football, because football is king in America. BYU got two very strong commitments out of the transfer portal recently, and that is the Bachmeier brothers, Tiger and Bear. And those guys are probably from either Idaho or Utah with names like that. And guess what? They're from Idaho. They are the younger brothers of Hank Bachmeier. He was the former starting quarterback for Boise State and Louisiana Tech and Wake Forest, actually. He was pretty busy once the power went back to the players. And that's really good because they're both 4-star blue chip recruits. And Bear Bachmeier, the quarterback, was recruited by Oregon, Michigan, Notre Dame, Stanford, and BYU. He originally committed to Stanford, but that whole mess over there happened that Andrew Luck had to clean up, and that coaching staff is undergoing some turmoil akin to what happened at Utah State. And so those guys went, well, we committed to that coaching staff. That staff's not there anymore. We're leaving. And so they're coming to BYU. Tiger Bachmeier is a very solid receiver. Now, he's not going to replace Keelan Marion because he's not that kind of receiver, but he is a very strong slot receiver. So that's going to be very good. He caught 46 passes for 476 yards over 2 seasons at Stanford. So he still has a year or two of eligibility left. Bear Bachmeier is in the vein. I'm not going to compare him to Taysom Hill, but he is that same kind of quarterback. Insanely athletic, very strong arm, and can make all the throws you want him to make at the college level. So not only are they getting a productive wide receiver to replace some departed production from Darius Lassiter and Keelan Marion, but they're also getting a very, very strong contender for the future of the quarterback position when Jake Retzlaff leaves. That's a different episode for a different day. It's a long off season. It's a long summer. I'll probably be doing an episode on what I want to see the quarterback position to be at BYU. But suffice it to say right now, the job is Jake Retzlaff's. Ugh, my tongue almost snapped off its roller there. So that's really exciting as far as football goes. Yes, they did lose Harrison Taggart. Yes, they did lose Keelan Marion. Yes, they might lose JoJo Phillips as well. But they're getting stuff back in the transfer portal. They're not just feeders. They're also taking stuff out. So that's very encouraging. Kalani Sitake and Kyle Whittingham both are in the top 25 coaches released by ESPN heading in to this next season, which is really cool. Both schools seeing coaches there. I like seeing that. I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened before. Has that ever happened before? I don't think so. Because Lavelle Edwards was. He's in the Hall of Fame. I don't think a Utah coach has been up there at the same time as a BYU one. Obviously, like Urban Meyer, duh. Kyle Whittingham, duh, for a few years. But a BYU one and a Utah one at the same time. I think this is like the first time that's ever happened. So that's really cool. That's really cool. All right. So let's move on to the basketball side of things. And the transfers that have come in for BYU basketball are pretty darn cool. So who they got? They've got, obviously, the two guys I've already spoken about, Dominic Diamandi from Washington, and then Robert Wright III, depending on the recruiting service that you look at, depending on the website you're reading, top 2 or 3 point guard in the transfer portal. And then they also got Tyler Roos from Idaho. He's a forward, so that's forward depth, which BYU needs. And then Kennard Davis Jr., a shooting guard from Southern Illinois, which gives them scoring depth behind Richie Saunders, A.J. DeBonsa, and Robert Wright. This is really good, especially considering who they lost. They only lost Dallin Hall, Kenan Catchings, and Elijah Crawford. And those guys, while solid, did not necessarily tear up the hardwood. And so Dallin Hall went to Virginia, Kenan Catchings went to Georgia, and Elijah Crawford went to Illinois, Chicago. Probably for a bounce-back year, and then he's going to transfer elsewhere. But that's awesome. This team is turning into a top 10 team. The starting 5 is top 10. I would posit that they're top 5. And now Kevin Young and his staff are bringing in depth, which is what BYU needs. I know I talked about how they went like 11 deep in the NCAA tournament, which is really good because it keeps your starters fresh. But when you go that deep, you also expose yourself to not having the talent of a team like Alabama, for example. And so if you run that deep, those guys that are, 8, 9, 10, and 11 on your rotation are going to be going up against guys that are 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other team. That's just the nature of the rotation. And now Kevin Young is really starting to fill that out with athletic guys that can play in his system and not have to piecemeal it together. So I'm very excited about what Kevin Young and his staff are putting together at BYU. This next year is going to be exciting. There's going to be tons of hype. And that was before all of these transfers came in, just because of AJ Dubbanza. There has never been a number 1 overall recruit in basketball, or football for that matter, that came to the state of Utah. Period. Doesn't matter the school. So this is just unprecedented. And I'm here for it. Trust me, I'm here for it. And I'm very excited about everything that I'm seeing. We'll have to see if the roster stays together as we get closer to the basketball season in October. Hopefully it will. I don't see why it wouldn't. But Richie Saunders did declare that he is coming back. And so that's like 18 points a game back on the roster. And you don't have to go into the transfer portal or overload your star freshman to get that production covered. That's fantastic. And now that BYU is getting more athletic, the defense will come. It's just, oh man, you can hear it. You can hear it in my voice. Like I can't even string coherent thoughts together because of my excitement. But overall, the transfer success of BYU has been shocking to me because they got Keanu Tanavasa. They got Justin Kirkland from Oklahoma State, Caden Need from New Mexico, a tight end. They also got Carson Ryan, a tight end. So, I mean, come on. Where did this come from? I'm Q Cotton Eye Joe, because my goodness. All right, I know I wasn't going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. Real Salt Lake is so frustrating. They are so frustrating. Like, they're gangbusters against San Diego, and then they run into Vancouver, who is without their top striker, by the way. Their top striker, Brian Davis, missed the game with a hamstring injury. And so, okay, maybe Real Salt Lake has a shot. They showed they could score goals against San Diego. They didn't score a goal until the 96th minute. So, into the 6th minute of stoppage time is when they scored a goal, and that was a penalty. It would have been worse for Real Salt Lake if not for Vancouver missing a penalty. So this team, I'm very worried about because the history of the Miller family is not strong. I've talked about it before. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But if they don't see results right away, they're not going to spend. They're not going to invest in the team itself. Sure, they'll build up around the stadium. Sure, they'll do all of that, but that'll just jack up the prices of everything, and the product on the field will rot. So I'm very nervous about what's going on. Diego Luna is a star. Period. End of story. Move on to the next one. How long he will remain at Real Salt Lake, I'm thinking he's not going to last through the summer, because Real Salt Lake is going to receive an offer that they cannot refuse for this kid. He is worth the price of admission. If you can get to a Real Salt Lake game before July, get there and watch this guy play, because he's not going to be here for long. All right, that's all I'm going to talk about. I talked about it relentlessly over the past couple of weeks. We're done. Let's move on. All right, so what did Microsoft do this past week? Well, they went Nintendo on us. They jacked up the prices of their first-party games to $80, so $79.99. And they jacked up the price of the Xbox Series S by 27% to $379. The Series X, the one with the disc drive, so there's two different kinds of Xboxes right now. There's the Series S, which has no disc drive. It is all download only. It has a smaller hard drive, but it is thinner and it looks more sleek. That one is $379.99. The Xbox Series X, which is the one I recommended everyone to get when it came out, because it has a disc drive, which means you have Blu-ray discs, you have other stuff that you want to use the Xbox for, you can. That one is $600 now. $600. The first-party game prices will increase to $80 starting this holiday season. So if you want to get those games, you better get in now. Games like Avowed, Halo, Gears of War, all of those first-party games, even like the Activision games now, are going to be $80. Call of Duty, right? So These adjustments coincide with the tariffs, and that's not what this podcast is about. I'm not going to get into that. But for a guy in Phil Spencer, and I know he is not the only one making the decision. There is a board that he has to answer to, and I hate boards. I hate them. That's what I answered to at GameStop, and it was terrible. There's a whole board of decision makers that went into this. And instead of, power to the players, as GameStop used to say, or as a popular shirt that Phil Spencer, who is the head of Xbox at Microsoft, loved to wear, it said his gaming is for everyone. How is gaming for everyone when your consoles are $600? And then the one that is not even near as good as the $600 one is still almost $400. That is more than a Switch 2 is going to cost. It is more than a PlayStation 5. Well, a used one or a refurbished one. But still, my point stands. The first-party games at Xbox have been horrendous until the last couple of years when Microsoft started buying everybody up. They have improved. Immensely, they've improved. Because they bought Bethesda. They bought Activision Blizzard. Really good studios. So, why? Why? I don't care about your profit margin. You're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Swallow it. Get goodwill from people. The economy sucks. It has for years. Stop it. Stop beating a dead horse. Stop trying to get blood from this stone. Gaming is supposed to be for everybody. I wholeheartedly believe that. Which is why I'm probably going to start steering everybody towards indie games, indie titles, or free-to-play games that do not have a pay-to-win, or the pay-to-win is not a sheer cliff that you drop into. Games like League of Legends, that's not pay-to-win. Games like Apex Legends, that one can be pay-to-win because you need to buy certain heroes and champions, but, whatever. Smite, that one. So there's plenty of free-to-play games, even Warzone. Like, if you don't want to get, the blueprinted weapons, that's free-to-play. Halo Infinite Multiplayer, that's free-to-play. And that's definitely not pay-to-win. So I'm going to start trending towards those. And then the indie games, I'm going to start telling you to buy those. Marvel Rivals, Overwatch 2. I forgot completely about those two games. Neither of them are pay-to-win. And both of them, now that Overwatch 2 has had competition, all of the heroes are free. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to get a season pass. And then there's the big one. There's Fortnite. That one's not pay to win. So there is plenty out there for you to play without having to spend $80 on a game. That's like almost 2 meals at Ruth's Chris. Well, hold on. Maybe not. That's like 2 appetizers at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. You know what I mean? So it's not great. It's not great. It's a bad time to be a gamer. My advice right now is if you can find either a used PC that has been built within the last 3 years, or you purchase something like a Steam Deck or one of the Lenovo handheld PC Switch-like systems, get those. Because then you have access to Steam or GOG or what's the other one I'm thinking of? The Epic Games Store, where you have cheap games. You have games like Clair Obscura. Oh, by the way, Game of the Year, indie developer, $44.99, go nuts. I haven't played it yet. I just beat Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. And that was the first time I beat it, by the way. I didn't really get into it when it came out. Buy it, get it. It's wonderful. It's $49.99 for now. Get it. It's great. But Steam will be able to do things for you with these cheaper games. And what I've noticed is because of streamers like Thor, known as Pirate Software, and Thor is his real name, there are more streamers like him telling you, just buy indie. And it gives you reasons why, and the reasons are miraculous. It's because indie games do not have to answer to publishers. These developers can just develop the game they want. There's no board of directors they have to appease. And so these games are more pure. They're more fun. Like, there's a whole slew of them out there. Traveler's Rest is a wonderful simulation game where you play as a bartender, or a tavern keeper, I guess I should say, rebuilding a tavern in a quaint little medieval town, and there's like magical elements to it, and it's just a wonderful little game. I've sunk in a lot of hours into it. Balatro. Holy smokes. Balatro is one of the best games ever made. Stardew Valley. And Concerned Ape, the developer of Stardew Valley, is working on a second game called Haunted Chocolatier. He's been working on it for years, and he said he's going to be kicking up development process to get that game out. So instead of paying the $100 price tag that I am sure Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to charge you next year, you could buy 4 to 5 great games for that price tag. For the $600 cost of the Xbox Series X, you could probably hop onto KSL right now and find a used gaming laptop or a used gaming rig that will run these free-to-play games. I mean, my goodness, you could play Final Fantasy XIV or World of Warcraft for years based off of the price tags here. A 1-year subscription to World of Warcraft, if you can still get it, I don't know if you still can, that cost me $89.99. That's $10 more than what they're doing with these games now. A 6-month subscription to Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn Online, long name I know, but that's the correct name, $69.99. Yeah, 6 months, and I can play it. Sure, you have to purchase the expansions, but these games, since they've been out for so long, always have bundles and sales going on to get you caught up. And then there are hundreds of hours of content in there for you where you're not spending $600 and then another $90 for each subsequent game that comes out. The expansions generally run $59.99, $49.99, depending. And then obviously there's like the collector's editions or premium editions, stuff like that. But right now, when it comes to AAA or, as Ubisoft put it, quadruple A gaming experiences, they're just not worth it anymore. I know I told you to get Assassin's Creed, but honestly, get the older ones. They're cheaper. Like, you could get Black Flag, probably widely considered the best Assassin's Creed game, for like $20 to $30. You could probably go into GameStop right now, get a used copy for $15, $16. I haven't looked that up, but I would imagine that's what it would cost. And so there's such a backlog, too, of great games, like the Borderlands series. My goodness. Borderlands 1, 2, and 3, the pre-sequel. You can get the Handsome Collection. That is 3 fantastic games for $60. So what I'm telling you, Spelunkers and Spelunker parents, is if your loved ones ask for a new console, because PlayStation, I am sure, is soon to follow. They were always the ones that wanted to charge more for consoles. And so now that they've seen Nintendo and Microsoft do it, that gives Sony the green light to go, all right, we're going to charge like $900 for our PlayStation 5. When the PlayStation 6 comes out, $1,200. Like, I would not be surprised to see that. So if your loved one asks for a Switch 2, for a Series X, look at them and go, I hear you, I understand you, but let's look at these other options. And look into the Steam Deck. It's like $300 for the OLED 1 terabyte. I have it. I love it. It can play most games. It can play all of the indie games. The games that it struggles with are the AAA games. Well, there you go. Talk to them about looking for a used gaming laptop on KSL. They're out there. I've seen them. They're pretty cheap. And just kind of change the conversation from always wanting new to going, there is a strong history of games here. Let's just look in the past here. Because the future of gaming right now is pretty darn bleak when it comes to AAA. And I'm not happy about it. As you can tell, because I ranted about this for about 10 minutes. But that's the episode this week, everybody. I appreciate you all being here. As always, like, comment, subscribe, 5 stars, review, whatever it is, however you listen, helps me out a ton. And I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.